Famous last words is what I've called my sermon today. And I want to start with a little bit of a quiz. Is everyone up for a quiz? Okay. Mask wearing is not agreeing with my asthma, I must just say. I'm not sick, it's just the mask. So, famous last words. No. Tell me if you know the famous last words of these people. So the first one is Winston Churchill. Now, he was a World War II British PM, got them through the war, gave a famous speech about, "We will never surrender." What do you reckon his last words might have been? Something really inspiring? Yeah? I'm bored with it all. I don't know. That's what the internet tells me. His last words were, "I'm bored with it all." Not the inspiration I was thinking we might get from Winston Churchill, but there you go. Okay, next one. Bob Marley, reggae singer, into peace and love. Light me up. Toddy thinks it might be light me up. Anyone else got any ideas? It's actually profound, more even profound than Winston Churchill's. Money can't buy life. He died quite young, 39, and so he realised, I guess at that point, what was important in life. Okay, Queen Elizabeth I ruled in the 1500s. Do you reckon she would have been, if you don't know the words, do you reckon she'd be inspirational or flippant? It's hard to off with his head. Maybe that's not her, that might have been her father, but anyway. Actually, she was inspirational. All my possessions for a moment of time. That's deep. She realised the importance of life as well. Okay, Ned Kelly. Okay, a few people know this one, Such is Life. Now, I've put here that it's disputed because there's all these arguments about how could we possibly know what he said, but apparently, allegedly, the internet tells me so it must be true. His last words were, "Such is life." Okay, last one. The Marquis De Favre. I made up how to say that. It could be the Marquis De Favre. I don't speak French. So this guy was like 1700s France. He was sentenced to death. I've only ever heard of this guy because of his last words. It's been going around the internet. Has anyone seen this? I see that you have made 3 spelling mistakes. So he got his death warrant and he went, "I see that you have made 3 mistakes," and that was it for him. I don't know, that just appeals to my humour for some reason. Okay, there is one more. Jesus. Can anyone tell me Jesus' last words? It is finished. Well, that's his last words on the cross. But is that his last words? What about after the resurrection? It also depends on which gospel you're reading too, because they all end a little bit differently with different scenes depending on what the author was wanting to stress. But Lastus is going to come up for us now, and he's going to read Jesus' last words from the book of Matthew.
Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountains where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me," teaching them to obey everything I have... Sorry. They're stuffing me out. Is that you stuffing me out? Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of age."
My apologies for my inability to actually remember to click. So, Jesus' last words. Now, if you take it technically, his last words were, "I am with you to the very end of the age." That's pretty inspirational, pretty encouraging. But the bit that I want to look at today is what we often call the Great Commission. And it's the middle chunk of those verses. "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptising them and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you." But what is this actually about? What is the core of this Great Commission? Because I've heard this used for a whole stack of different things. I've heard it used for encouraging people to go on overseas missions, go and disciple the nations. I've heard it talked about in terms of evangelism, go and share the news of God with people. I've heard it about discipleship, the word disciple is in it. I want to dig into this today, into Jesus' famous last words, and find out what it actually means. Does that sound okay? Okay. Now to do this, there's a couple of words that I want to actually pick out. Have a look at what they mean. And that's these words here. Go. What does go mean? Make disciples, all nations, baptising and teaching. We're going to go through these fairly quickly, but it's important to know what these words mean. What do you think the word go means? Go? I think this is one of the words why it's sometimes confusing about what this is about. It's been used to indicate go somewhere else, go overseas, go here, go there. But how this is actually translated, it could be translated as having gone. There's an assumption that you're actually already doing it, or as you go. So it's something that you do, something that is part of what you normally do. So rather than suggesting go somewhere else specifically, I would suggest that what it actually means is as you go about life, having gone as you go. There's definitely intentionality about it, but it's not something you go somewhere else to do. It's part of what you're naturally doing. Okay, make disciples. Well, first of all, I should probably define what a disciple is, and I probably don't need to now that Adam and Cherie have shared and Brett shared. But being a disciple, as they said, is about following Jesus. And for those of us who call ourselves disciples of Christ, Christ followers, it's about this journey that we take with Jesus where we want to become more and more like him. Okay, so what does make disciples mean? Well, here's the thing. In the original language, there's not two words here. There's not the word make as a verb and disciples as a noun. There's actually only one word, and that word is a verb, disciple. What it says is, therefore go and disciple the nations or all nations. So disciple is a verb. And so to translate it as make disciples, that's pretty good. You know, that kind of makes sense. But there's one tiny little subtlety that we lose when we translate it like that. Because the verb disciple can actually also be an internal reference. Go and disciple, well, kind of infers that you need to disciple yourself or be discipled first, be a disciple first before you can go and disciple others. So how I've interpreted it here, and I've just lost everything, but I'm going to keep talking. So how I've interpreted it here is this idea of disciple, as in be a disciple, and make a disciple at the same time. So first of all, as you go, the second one is disciple, which is to be a disciple and to make a disciple. Now, the third word that I had underlined there was all nations. And again, I think this is one of the words that has made people think that this is kind of necessarily more about overseas mission or something like that, that you go to all nations. But what you've got to remember here is this is Jesus actually talking to, we're back. There we go. All nations. So Jesus is talking to his disciples here. And Jesus is a Jew, and all of his disciples are Jews. So what Jesus is actually meaning when he says this is not just for you guys. This isn't just for the Jewish nation. This is for all nations. So you can interpret that as everyone, anyone. So rather than go specifically to a nation, it's for everybody. And if we read through the rest of the New Testament, Paul often talks about this isn't just for the Jews, it's for the Gentiles as well. So far, as you go about life, disciple, be one and make some, everyone. Baptising. Now, this is one that I could spend ages on, I won't. The word that's used here actually translates as immersing. And if you think about what we refer to as baptising, that's when someone gets, immersed in water. Through the tradition of baptism, this word is usually translated now as baptism, but it actually means immersing. So the question here is Jesus saying go dunk people in water, or is he saying immerse them some other way? And look, there's a lot of arguments for both here. But I was thinking about this, and I looked earlier on in Matthew, and John the Baptist is talking, and he says, I baptise, I immerse in water, but one is coming who will baptise with the Holy Spirit, immerse in the Holy Spirit. And for me, that's a bit of an indicator that what Jesus might be talking about here is actually immersing in the Holy Spirit, in God, fully surrounding someone, fully filling someone with the Holy Spirit. So could it mean dunking in water as baptism? Yes, but I also believe that it's having someone being filled with the Holy Spirit, so immersing. Okay, last one, teaching. What do you think teaching means? Anyone got any ideas? What do you think of when you think of teaching? You think of education, you think of school, you think of university lecturers. It does mean that kind of teaching, but it's a lot more broad than that. It means teach, direct, cause to learn, show, model, help to understand. So when we're talking about teaching here, and this becomes really important later, it's not just giving information. It's modelling, it's helping, it's showing people how to do something. So they're the 5 words that I want to kind of have a quick look at. And so if you look at the way I've defined them there, this is how, if you call it the Karyn International Version of the Bible, this is what the Karyn International Version would say. Therefore, as you go about life, disciple. Be a disciple. Encourage everyone in their discipleship journey. Intentionally get involved in someone else's discipleship journey. See, the go has intentionality about it. It just doesn't necessarily mean go somewhere else. So intentionally get involved in someone else's discipleship journey. Help them be immersed in God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. Now, what I think this Great Commission is about, really, and it may have been a hint that we had an interview about discipleship before, I believe the Great Commission is about discipleship. Yes, there's elements of evangelism, yes, there's elements of mission there, but I believe the core of what Jesus is talking about and instructing here is discipleship. There's one more little hint here about that. If you have a look at the word disciple, I've put a couple of exclamation marks after it, because if you know a little bit about language, there's this particular type of verb, and we have it in English and they have it in the Greek. It's called the imperative. And that type of verb, it's not just a, Karyn is talking, Karyn eats chocolate, that kind of verb. It's an instruction. So if you see someone about to walk out on the road in front of a car, you might go, stop. That's an imperative verb. The only imperative verb in this whole passage is the word disciple. That is the instruction here. Therefore, as you go about life, disciple. It's the instruction. So what I believe this Great Commission, Jesus' famous last words to his disciple is about discipleship. But is there more to this? Well, let's have a look at the passage again. As I said before, this idea of teaching, it's not just this transferal of information. It's not just this transaction. And sometimes, like when I've read this before, I've thought, oh, yep, okay, go, do this, do these tasks, make disciples, do this, do this. And I don't know about you, but sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in the information, in the transaction of all of this kind of thing. But I don't believe the Great Commission is about information at all. I actually believe it's about transformation. And there's 2 words here that, for me, tell me that this isn't just information, this isn't just transactions, this isn't just doing stuff. It's actually about life transformation. So the first word is disciple. And that makes sense. If you're a disciple of Christ, as the 12 disciples were, you're in a relationship with Jesus. This isn't about up here. This is about here. This is about transformation in your life. So that one kind of makes sense. But there's a second word here that for me indicates this is about transformation. Any idea what it might be? Any guesses? This word, now I've read this passage a billion times, not quite, but a lot. And a couple of months ago, this word just jumped out. And when I dug into it and looked into it, it kind of blew my mind what this word meant. The word that tells me that this is about not just information, not just transaction, but about transformation of life. That's right, it's no words. It's actually the word obey. Now, you're all looking at me like obey, okay? That doesn't sound like a very transformational word. Obey sounds like, Karyn, do this. Okay, God. Obey sounds like something where you're told what to do and you do it. Is that right? But here's the thing. I love this. When you look at the word obey, and I've put the Greek up there for anyone that wants to look this up, terio, if you want to say that after me, terio. My pronunciation was never that good, but anyway. What it means is keep, guard, observe, give heed to. Yeah, okay, that stuff all sounds fairly transactional, doesn't it? Fairly obedience. Oh, but wait till you hear some more definitions. Take to heart, take seriously, give heed to. What Jesus is saying here is take to heart my commandments, take them seriously. This word also means to guard from injury or loss by keeping an eye upon, spiritually guard. Now, this isn't saying spiritually guard the commandments and guard the commandments. This is about keeping an eye upon the commandments, being aware of the commandments, because when you do, these commandments are going to guard you and protect you and keep you intact. This isn't just aimless obeying. This is obeying with transformation. Now, there's a verse here. Now, Adam said a verse before about if you love me, love each other, and that's how people will know you're my disciples. I've got another one here from John 14. Jesus says, if you love me, obey my command. And this obey is that same word. Why do you think Jesus says this? Do you think Jesus is some, tyrannical person who is like, you've got to obey me. If you love me, you're going to show by obeying me. Well, that's not the Jesus I know. The Jesus I know says this because he's saying, oh, Karyn, I know what's good for you. I know what's best. I know it's going to help you. Keep my commandments and it's going to go really well for you. And what kind of commandments are we talking about here? Well, as I said, Adam before said love one another. This other verse from Matthew here, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and some versions say strength. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it, love your neighbour as yourself. Now, last time I preached, I actually used this passage, and I looked at particularly love your neighbour as yourself. And sometimes we forget this little as yourself at the end. But this commandment, what it means is we need to understand how God loves us. Jesus commands us to understand how he loves us so we can see ourselves in that light, understand that love, and then go and show that love to other people. That's not the command of, someone who wants, this ridiculous, mindless obedience. This is the love of someone, this is a commandment of someone who wants to transform your life. The commandments Jesus gave are all about transforming our lives. So when you read that word obey, this isn't anything to do with mindless information, transaction. This is to do with transforming our lives. The Great Commission, it's about discipleship, but it's also about transformation, not information. I don't know about you, sometimes I get stuck in the information highway and it takes a little while to get down to the transformation place. But that is what Jesus is calling us to do in the Great Commission. Now, the last thing, I'm going to give you a really quick example, 4 examples of discipleship in the Bible. And kind of in the interview before, they kind of mentioned all of these. But this is the kind of stuff that I am just passionate about seeing here in our church. So the first one is this idea of mentoring. And there's a biblical example of this, Paul and Timothy. So most of you know Paul wrote a lot of the New Testament. He took this younger guy, Timothy, alongside him, trained him, taught him, modelled how to live the right life. And I deliberately chose a picture here with someone who's taller, meaning further along the journey, with someone shorter, but they're down at their level helping them. That's what mentoring's about. And there's a great verse here. In one of the letters Paul writes to Timothy, he says, "To Timothy, my true son in the faith." Being a mentor is about being a spiritual parent, as it were. Mentoring is so amazing. I've mentored a number of people over the years, and just seeing where Jesus takes them is fantastic. Okay, the second one, and this is one we don't recognise that often, but peer groups. And this is something that Cherie was talking about. Peer groups, you'll notice they're all the same height. This is representing a couple of people who may be around the same stage of their journey, who get together and keep each other accountable, challenge each other. In fact, the verse that I've got here is, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. This is about getting together, reading the word together, challenging, keeping accountable and that kind of thing. And if you read Acts, Peter, James and John, man, they were hanging out together all the time, doing miracles, all kinds of stuff. They are my biblical example. The next one is families. Now, I've deliberately chosen an interesting looking family there because I don't want to make any assumptions about what your family looks like. Mine is me and my cats. However, when I was younger, our schedules were all crazy, but Mum and Dad always used to make sure that we had lunch together on a Sunday and Dad would read us a devotional. Now, at the time, I don't know about Louise, but I used to snigger and think it was funny, whatever. But now, having lost Mum earlier this year and Dad about 10 years ago, I'd give anything to have those time back. Parents, I want to encourage you that this time you spend discipling your children, it will stick with them. The verse that I've got here is, train children in the right way, and when old, they will not stray. Now, I want to use this as an encouragement, not a condemnation, because I know there are parents who go, well, I thought I was training my child in the right way, and look where they are. Jesus said we are to disciple people. Jesus didn't say we are to save people, because we can't do that. Your job as parents, I'm not a parent, but your job as parents is to disciple your kids, teach them the right thing. And this verse is our hope. This verse is your hope as a parent. You'll train your child. Look, I'll tell you, I went away, I left the path, but I knew what the truth was the whole time and I came back. If you've discipled your child, it'll be there. It'll be there. They'll know. And that is our hope, that they won't stray and they'll come back. Now, if you want to know more about family discipleship, if you want to know about discipling cats, talk to me. If you want to know about discipling families, talk to Steve. He's brilliant. Okay, lucky last one, life groups. Now, I've left this one to last for a good reason, because oftentimes people just think this is the default one. You're in a life group, it's discipleship. This doesn't work for everybody. One of those other three may be the way it works for you. And I'm going to put this out here. We have struggled for a long time at NBC to get people to lead life groups. And I think one of the reasons is what I said about that word teach before. I think people think leading a life group, you need to have some massive amount of knowledge. You need to be able to give every answer to every question. You need to be this like guru. Do you know what you need to be a life group facilitator? Passion, the heart, the desire. That's it. And I have people say to me, I want to join a life group. And I'm like, do you want to lead one? We simply don't have enough people leading life groups. And I think it's because people have a wrong perception about what it is. You notice that the people in my group there are all the same height. They're all similar kind of stages. Some might be a little bit further along. Some might be a bit, newer. But you don't have to be some super guru, 6 foot, 10 foot high person. This can be for anybody. So there, I've put a plug out. If you're interested, come and see me afterwards. So my verse there is, therefore encourage one another and build each other up. That's what life groups do. They disciple each other, they build each other up. They're fantastic. All of these 4 groups, mentoring, peer groups, families and life groups, all fulfill this great commission from Matthew that we've just read. So the Great Commission is about discipleship. It's about transformation, not information. Is there anything else you noticed about these groups that might give us a third thing that the Great Commission is about? Relationship. The Great Commission, yes, it's discipleship, but it's also Jesus saying he wants us to be transformed and transformed in relationship. Now, I'm an introvert. I like to say I like time by myself. I can do without people. But you know what? I can't. Even for introverts, we do need people. We need people around us to encourage us and to build us up. So Jesus' famous last words. If I could put these into another Karyn International version, this isn't, in essence, is what I believe Jesus was saying. In everything you do, Help each other grow and transform. I've given you instructions, commandments on how to do this because I love you. Be in relationship with each other, disciple each other, encourage each other, and remember, I am with you always. That last line, Jesus is there always to help us with this. That is what I believe the famous last words of Jesus, the Great Commission, are saying to us today. So, how are we going to respond to this? I'm going to ask the team to come up. It's funny, I've given you information today, and I've said it's not about information, it's about transformation. But maybe the transformation today for you, maybe God's challenging you a little bit about what you do around discipleship. Maybe He's encouraging you to get on board with mentoring. Be a mentor, get a mentor. If your name's Karyn, maybe He's encouraging you to follow up with your mentee because it's been too long since you've caught up. Maybe He's encouraging you to get into a peer group where you keep each other accountable. Maybe He's encouraging you to disciple your family. Maybe He's encouraging you to start a life group. But there was two other words there that I just want to dig into for a minute. One of them is transformation and one of them is relationship. Maybe, like me, sometimes you have trouble getting from the information to the transformation. And maybe you feel like your walk with Jesus lately has been all about information, all about task. You feel like a bit of a robot. God, I'm doing this. Here's my task. Here's my task. But you don't feel like you're being transformed. Maybe the word that's really stuck with you today is transformation. Maybe that is what you need in your life today. Maybe you need that transformation in your life before you can even think about this discipling and getting involved and discipling other people and being discipled. You need a transformation to kickstart you. And the other word was relationship. How is your relationship with Jesus today? Is it going gangbusters? Is it a bit distant? Maybe today what you need is to re-establish, reignite, repassionize, is a word I just made up, your relationship with Jesus. Maybe you have a relationship with someone else and you think, before I can think about being involved in discipling other people, I need to fix this relationship as much as I can. Maybe that is what Jesus is prompting you today. As always, our place of prayer here is open. This mercy seat is a place where you can meet with God. If you want to come and pray today, please do. Our prayer team would love to pray with you. We'd love to pray with you for whatever God's calling you to do today. We'd love to pray with you for transformation in your life. At NBC, we always talk about hope, freedom and transformation. It's written on our wall there. Is that what you need today? Do you need relationship with Jesus restored so that you can get on board this discipleship journey with Him and have your life transformed? Why don't you come as we pray?